Hi everyone, I'm Narutolysis. Today, we're going to talk about Hiruzen Sarutobi, the third Hokage. When it comes to the third Hokage, the moment that stands out most is probably his final word. Where the leaves dance, the fire burns ever brighter. The shadow of the fire will illuminate the village, and the leaves will sprout anew. This perfectly sums up his life's mission, to pass down the will of fire to the next generation. Hiruzen was the teacher of Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Orochimaru. He also helped train Minato Namikaze, the fourth Hokage, removed Kakashi from the Anbu to lead Team 7 with Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura, and influenced the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th Hokages. Even Konoha Maru, who might become the 8th, was deeply shaped by him. Hiruzen Sarutobi is portrayed as a kind and wise elder who viewed the village as his family and treated its people like relatives. However, this kindness sometimes came off as overly lenient, like when he hesitated to punish Orochimaru. Yet, as the longest reigning Hokage and someone who lived through every major shinobi world war, his wisdom and strategic mind went far deeper than his gentle demeanor. The Sarutobi clan is one of Konoha's founding families. Other prominent members include Asuma and Konoha Maru. In fact, when Hashirama and Madara were creating the village, Hashirama specifically mentioned, along with the Uchiha and Senju, the Sarutobi and Shimura clans also want to join us. As for the Shimura clan, only one person truly stands out, Danzo Shimura, who became the source of much of Konoha's trouble. Danzo was one of Hiruzen's closest friends. As kids, they would sit together atop the Hokage rock, dreaming about the village's future. This bond may explain why Hiruzen remained so lenient with Danzo, even after becoming Hokage. Hiruzen wasn't just a member of a prominent family, he was also a direct student of the first and second Hokages. I've mentioned before that Tobirama Senju, the second Hokage, was a true innovator of ninjutsu. Hiruzen, his pupil, came to be known as the Professor, mastering nearly every jutsu in Konoha, including forbidden techniques like the Reaper Death Seal. That said, there were limits to his knowledge. He didn't have any Kekkei Genkai, bloodline abilities, nor could he learn every clan's secret techniques or his master's flying Raijin. His signature abilities were summoning the Monkey King, Enma, and using the adamantine staff. Tobirama even gave him the nickname Monkey. However, Hiruzen didn't become the first Hokage from outside the Senju bloodline, just because of his status or ability. If those were the only factors, Danzo, also a disciple of Tobirama, could have matched him in every way. The real requirement to become Hokage has always been the one recognized by all. When Hiruzen was young, the First Shinobi World War was in full swing. He joined Konoha's most elite team, the Hokage Guard Platoon, which included Kagami Uchiha, Shirsue's father, elders Koharu Utakane and Hamura Mitokado, Torafu Akimichi, and Danzo Shimura. At the end of the war, Senju Tobirama led the team to the Cloud Village for peace talks. However, the two traitors, Kinko and Ginko, suddenly attacked, assassinating the second Raikage. Tobirama and the others found themselves surrounded, and to escape the encirclement, someone had to stay behind to hold off the enemies. At this moment, Tobirama decided to sacrifice himself to protect the seedlings of Konoha. However, he had yet to decide on his successor, so he tested them. Tobirama asked, "Who among you is willing to stay behind as bait?" As the Hokage, one must have the resolve to stand up for the village in its time of crisis. He was testing their courage. Danzo hesitated, despite his willingness to sacrifice himself, lacking the courage. Young Sarutobi Hiruzen, without hesitation, stepped forward and said, "I'll do it." This was the difference between Danzo and Hiruzen. For Konoha, Hiruzen could bear the threats and challenges from the other nations as Hokage. Danzo, on the other hand, only dared to act from the shadows. After Tobirama's sacrifice, Hiruzen became the third Hokage. He appointed Danzo as his assistant, trusting him deeply and granting him significant power. Danzo then used his position to secretly create his own faction, Root. Root was even more hidden than the Anbu, engaging in more unspeakable acts. Hiruzen tolerated this, knowing that for the stability and order of the village, there must be not only a righteous leader as a role model, but also a ruthless eliminator of threats. He was the Hokage who would always be a warm light in the village, while Danzo operated in the darkness as a decisive force. Together, they made Konoha the strongest ninja village once again. As mentioned earlier, Hiruzen was the bearer of the will of fire. He dedicated himself to nurturing the younger generation of ninjas. He proposed a team configuration of 2 boys, 1 girl, and 1 team leader, believing that the boys would become aware of the girl's presence, and competition would help them grow. He personally nurtured the first generation of main characters, establishing the tradition of the bell-stealing exercise. His students were the granddaughter of the first Hokage, Tsunade, as well as Orochimaru and Jiraiya. For Orochimaru, who was gifted but became withdrawn after the death of his parents, Hiruzen did his best to guide him and help him overcome his shadow. For Jiraiya, who was kind-hearted but lacked talent, Hiruzen gave him extra attention, introducing him to summoning techniques, which led Jiraiya reverse summoning himself to Mount Myaboku. These three would later become known as the legendary Three Ninjas of Konoha. When the Third Great Ninja War broke out, Konoha, under Hiruzen's guidance in training new recruits, entered a golden age. The legendary Three Ninjas, the Yellow Flash, the Body Flicker of Konoha, the White Fan, and many others, each had titles that struck fear into their enemies. Konoha went to war with the other four nations, gaining the upper hand. However, this success came at a great cost. Tsunade lost both her lover and brother, suffering from hemophobia. Hiruzen became melancholic. Hatake Sakumo committed suicide due to a mission. Two of Minato's disciples died, and the only one left, Kakashi, was like a walking corpse. To avoid further loss, Hiruzen signed a peace treaty with the powerful enemy, Anoki of the Evagakure village, ending the long and exhausting war that had nearly crippled Konoha. However, this decision greatly angered Danzo. Danzo felt that they could have won but chose to make peace. He described it as, "It's almost like we lost." Danzo and Hiruzen had a serious falling out. Danzo even joined forces with Homura and Koharu to hold Hiruzen accountable for the outcome of the war and the sacrifices made, yet seemingly without a conclusive victory. Hiruzen Sarutobi stepped down as Hokage. The reason he could retire without worry was that the best candidate for the next Hokage had already appeared, Jiraiya's student and his own grand student, Minato Namikaze. Danzo had proposed Orochimaru for the position, but Hiruzen firmly rejected the idea. Though Orochimaru was a beloved disciple, Hiruzen knew he had no interest in the will of fire. When recommending Minato, it wasn't out of favoritism, but recognition of his virtues. Although Minato lacked experience, Hiruzen believed that with his guidance for a time, Minato would grow into an exceptional Hokage. Because of this, even after retiring, Hiruzen didn't fully retreat behind the scenes. Instead, he and the fourth Hokage practically formed a co-governance of the village. Not long after, Minato's wife, Kushina Uzumaki, became pregnant. This should have been a joyous occasion. However, Kushina had a unique identity. She was the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki. During childbirth, a Jinchuriki becomes extremely vulnerable, and there's a risk of the seal being broken. For the village's safety, Hiruzen arranged for Minato and Kushina to deliver the baby in a secret chamber far from the village. To maintain utmost secrecy, he even sent his own wife to assist in the delivery. Despite taking every precaution, disaster struck. Not only did the Nine-Tails break free of its seal, but it also appeared directly in the village. Faced with an unprecedented crisis that could destroy the entire village, Hiruzen ordered all young ninjas to evacuate, forbidding them from approaching the Nine-Tails. The village could be rebuilt, but its future, the younger generation, had to be preserved. He assigned the Uchiha police force to protect the villagers from the rear, while he led the Umbu and other senior ninjas in battle against the Nine-Tails. Hiruzen summoned the Monkey King, Enma. While Enma wasn't as massive as giant summons like Gamabunta, his unique ability lay in transforming into a weapon, the adamantine staff. The staff, over 13,000 pounds in weight, pushed the Nine-Tails out of the village. But Hiruzen, already advanced in years, soon grew exhausted. At that critical moment, the Nine-Tails began preparing a tailed beast bomb aimed at the village. Just as disaster seemed inevitable, Minato finally returned. He drove away Obito, who had orchestrated the attack, and used Flying Raijin to teleport the Nine-Tails to a distant location. When Hiruzen arrived to assist, he found Minato and Kushina had already set up a barrier. They used the Uzumaki clan's adamantine chains and the Forbidden Reaper death seal. Hiruzen tried to intervene, perhaps intending to sacrifice himself in place of the young and promising Minato, but he couldn't enter the barrier. In the end, the Nine-Tails soul was split in two, sealed within Minato and his newborn son. Minato and Kushina paid the ultimate price, sacrificing their lives. In her final moments, Kushina entrusted her baby to Hiruzen. The child's name was Naruto, chosen by Minato after a character in Jiraiya's novel. Hiruzen solemnly vowed, "His name is Naruto? I will take good care of him. After the disaster, my top priority will be rebuilding the village and finding a new Hokage." At that time, Jiraiya was traveling the world, and Tsunade had left the village, consumed by her gambling habit. Kakashi's generation was still too young. Konoha found itself in turmoil and uncertainty. During a high-level meeting, Danzo tried to seize the opportunity to claim the Hokage title, but Hiruzen preemptively declared, "I will take on this responsibility until the next Hokage is ready. Consider me a transitional leader." This enraged Danzo. Years ago, Tobirama had chosen Hiruzen as his successor, and now, after finally enduring Hiruzen's retirement, Danzo found himself overshadowed once more. Danzo's frustration turned to outright hostility. He even planned an assassination attempt to eliminate Hiruzen, but the plot was uncovered and thwarted. Faced with charges of attempting to assassinate the Hokage, a crime punishable by death, Hiruzen showed showed mercy. This matter will not be pursued further. I hope you can dedicate yourself fully to Konoha in the future. Danzo sneered. You're still as soft as ever. Your naivete will be your downfall one day. Hiruzen replied calmly. Where there is light, there must be shadow. Neither can exist without the other. The world cannot function without balance. Although Hiruzen's words were philosophical, Danzo didn't seem to do anything good afterward. On the contrary, he colluded with Hiruzen's disciple Orochimaru to conduct forbidden human experiment. Eventually, Orochimaru's laboratory was exposed, and Hiruzen personally led a team to capture him. However, facing his former beloved disciple, he couldn't bring himself to take action. In a moment of hesitation, he allowed Orochimaru to escape. Danzo's earlier warning to Hiruzen came true years later between the master and apprentice. Konoha gradually returned to stability, but for Minato and Kushina's son, Naruto Uzumaki, Hiruzen found himself in a dilemma. As the orphan hero who saved the village, Naruto should have grown up surrounded by respect and care from the villagers. However, as a Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails, if his true identity were known, he would always be in danger. Thus, perhaps the best thing for him was to conceal his identity and let him grow up like an ordinary child from a regular family, secretly protecting and helping him. Hiruzen seemed to want to do that, but the result was disastrous. The villagers didn't know that Naruto was the son of the fourth Hokage, but they all knew he was the Nine Tails Jinchuriki. What should have been hidden was exposed, and what shouldn't have been exposed remained concealed. The villagers' hatred and anger toward the Nine Tails were all directed at Naruto. Enemy forces also began to target him. Even the Uchiha clan, when planning to rebel, had already prepared to capture Naruto. Given Hiruzen's wisdom, this must have been a plot device in the story. The initial premise for Naruto's character was already established, a boy growing up in an environment of isolation, striving to gain recognition from others. The ongoing manga series and later plot had to adhere to this setup. Therefore, it wasn't that Hiruzen couldn't take care of Naruto, but rather that the tragic childhood setting required Naruto to carry the burden of that pain. In episode 700 of the anime, a special segment depicted a past event between Hiruzen and Naruto. It showed young Naruto being ostracized by those around him, so poor that he couldn't even afford ramen. Hungry, he had to go to the forest to fish and pick mushrooms. At that moment, Hiruzen appeared as an old man passing by and shared food with him. Though I want to joke about how Naruto caught 3 fish, and Hiruzen took one, at that moment, Naruto's greatest need wasn't food, but care and companionship. Later, Naruto would call Hiruzen grandfather Hokage, and the two shared a close relationship, suggesting that Hiruzen had likely helped him through his lonely childhood. When Naruto entered the ninja academy, he enjoyed pranks. Hiruzen once asked Irika, Naruto's teacher, to look after him, explaining that Naruto had grown up without parental love, and the villagers avoided him due to the Nine-Tail. His pranks were his way of seeking attention. Irika was the first to show Naruto care and acceptance. After Naruto became a ninja, Hiruzen assigned him to the best team, having Minato's disciple, Kakashi, who had guarded Naruto for 9 months during Kushina's pregnancy, become his teacher. When danger arose, Kakashi would continue to protect Naruto. Hiruzen also paired Naruto with Sasuke Uchiha, a survivor of the Uchiha clan with potential for the Sharingan, as his teammate. If the Nine Tails lost control again, the Sharingan was the only known way to control Tailed Beast. He also placed Sakura Haruno, who admired Naruto but had feelings for Sasuke, in this team, creating a beautiful love triangle. Hiruzen Sarutobi once again witnessed the growth of the new generation of protagonists until they faced the Chunin exam. The Chunin exams, which are held twice a year, were not unusual, but this time, Orochimaru returned. He brought with him the Sound Ninja and Sand Ninja, aiming to overthrow Konoha. A complete sensory barrier was set up around the village, making it impossible for anyone to infiltrate on a normal day. However, the Chunin exams, with its mixed crowd, was the perfect opportunity for Orochimaru. Orochimaru disguised himself as a student, a teacher from the Sound, and even as the fourth Kazekage, fooling everyone. Although Orochimaru exposed himself during the second stage of the exams, the Chunin exams were a major event attended by the daimyos of various countries, making it impossible to cancel without major consequences. The third Hokage had no choice but to wait for Orochimaru to make his move. During the preliminary rounds, Hiruzen, along with elite shinobi like Kakashi and Guy, stood guard throughout. During the main event, extra personnel were sent to search the area, but Hiruzen didn't anticipate that Orochimaru, disguised as the Kazekage, would be sitting right next to him. During the match, Orochimaru suddenly attacked. He leaped onto the rooftops with Hiruzen, and the Sound Ninjas hidden inside the venue immediately followed suit, using the 4 purple flames formation to block off Konoha's Umbu reinforcement. Orochimaru then removed his disguise and challenged his former teacher. The third Hokage smiled, took off his Hokage cloak, and revealed that he was fully armed underneath. The two clashed, and Orochimaru summoned the first and second Hokage, using the Edo Tensei technique. Hiruzen initially thought this fight was just a lesson for his disciple, but instead, he found himself facing his own former masters. Although the first and second Hokage were revived, their strength was far less than in their prime, and Hiruzen, now older, struggled to keep up with the large-scale jutsu exchanges. Orochimaru casually watched from the side. Eventually, when the first Hokage used his wood-release technique to create the wood style, deep forest emerged. Hiruzen was caught off guard and entangled by the vine. It became clear that fighting two opponents was too much for him. Hiruzen finally summoned his summoning beast, the Monkey King Enma. Orochimaru, knowing how powerful this summoning beast was, immediately controlled the first and second Hokage to try and stop the transformation, but it was too late. The Monkey King broke free of their control and transformed into the adamantine staff, flying into Hiruzen's hand. Orochimaru, unable to simply watch any longer, pulled out the legendary sword Kusanagi and joined the battle. Although Orochimaru wasn't skilled in swordsmanship at this point, Hiruzen still held some hope for his former disciple. He remained cautious, but eventually, Orochimaru overpowered him, pinning him to the ground and threatening to destroy Konoha. Only then did Hiruzen make up his mind to stop hesitating. This was no longer about fighting, it was time to clean house. The long-awaited Enma finally made his move, breaking Orochimaru's neck with a single twist. Though it was a substitution technique, Hiruzen used explosive tags to destroy the first and second Hokage's arms and legs during the moment when the Edo Tensei bodies were out of control. However, the Edo Tensei bodies quickly regenerated on their own. To Hiruzen's shock, Orochimaru peeled off another layer of his disguise, revealing the face of a young woman. It turned out that Orochimaru had completed his forbidden research and had learned the technique of body switching. Hiruzen realized that he had to deal with Orochimaru here. An immortal and malicious being like him was more dangerous than the Nine Tails. Since regular attacks were ineffective, the only option was to seal him. The most powerful sealing technique he mastered was the forbidden jutsu used by the fourth Hokage to take down the Nine Tails, the dead demon-consuming seal. To Hiruzen, Konoha was not just an organization, it was home. The people of the village, though not related by blood, were connected through the will of fire. As Hokage, his duty was to be the pillar that protected this home. He inherited the will of the first and second Hokage, and soon, someone would inherit his will and become the new pillar. Hiruzen took action. He summoned the death god using the last of his chakra, and used shadow clones to seal the souls of the first and second Hokage, who had been resurrected through Edo Tensei. Then, he knocked Orochimaru's Kusanagi sword away and trapped him firmly. The death god's power pierced through Orochimaru's body, tearing out his soul. Relying on his immortality, Orochimaru was unafraid, but for the first time, he felt fear. He immediately controlled the Kusanagi's sword on the ground, attempting to stab Hiruzen to push him away. However, Hiruzen remained motionless, allowing the blade to pierce his body. Orochimaru exclaimed, "Why aren't you dodging?" Hiruzen didn't dodge, because the dead demon-consuming seal required the sacrifice of the user's life. He was ready to die along with Orochimaru. After using the seal, he was already a dying candle, and the sword wound hastened his end. He realized he didn't have the strength left to completely pull Orochimaru's soul from his body. "Unfortunately, I cannot take you with me," Hiruzen murmured. The death god struck with its side, but only succeeded in severing the souls of Orochimaru's hand. "But I will take away your ninjutsu. You will never use them to harm Konoha again." Just like the sealing techniques used by Minato, the same jutsu appeared on Hiruzen's abdomen, sealing both his soul and Orochimaru's hands permanently. Slowly, Hiruzen closed his eyes. The terrifying face of Orochimaru and the pure, talented young man he once was overlapped in his mind. Perhaps it wasn't that Hiruzen lacked the strength to take him with him. At the end, he still believed that his disciple had given him one last chance for redemption. He never excluded Orochimaru from Konoha, this family. Wherever Konoha's flames fly, the fire of life will continue. With that, the third Hokage passed away, but the will of fire that he passed on lived on, generation after generation. During the Fourth Great Ninja War, Orochimaru, with his hands restored, used Edo Tensei to resurrect successive generation Kage. This time, he fought for Konoha and the ninja world. Hiruzen must have been pleased to see his disciple truly repent. This concludes the episode. If you like this video, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm Narutolysis, and we'll see you next time.